Yes, and protesters against the asylum seekers being here who've been taking to the streets for the last few weeks, who were jubilant last week when this interim injunction was granted, meaning the asylum seekers would have to be out by the end of next week. Well, they no doubt will feel angry at this decision by the Court of Appeal. It was quite a lengthy decision, but found flaws essentially in what the High Court judge had ruled, essentially saying that the residents here in Epping, their fear of crime had properly been taken into account. He said he agrees it's relevant, but clearly outweighed by the undesirability of incentivising protests. Now, essentially what the judge was saying there was that while Epping Council had partly argued that they wanted the asylum seekers out to stop the protests happening here, what this judge was saying was, well, effectively that worked if that interim injunction had gone ahead and the asylum seekers had been moved out, and therefore that would incentivise protests in other parts of the country, as indeed we've already been seeing. And he also talked about how other councils would quickly move to get similar injunctions because there is clearly limited capacity for asylum seekers, accommodation around the country, and areas would want to be quick off the mark getting injunctions, while there was still capacity elsewhere in the country for asylum seekers to be moved to. So that was the reasoning behind this. It will clearly, I think, provoke some anger here in Epping and indeed in other communities where people have been taking to the streets in recent weeks to campaign against asylum seekers being housed in hotels in their communities. Now, remember, the protests here was sparked when one of the asylum seekers housed here was charged with sexual assault of a local schoolgirl. That trial is ongoing. That anger is still there. In fact, just across the road, I can see some posters that have been left clearly from a recent protest. Stop violence against women and girls. There are England flags, Union Jacks flying here. The anger is still here. And you know, just before that ruling was announced by the Court of Appeal, a man drove past, clearly angry, shouted at the police outside this hotel, "We will never give up." There was real tension, real anger in this community about the situation here at the hotel, clearly sparked by the arrest and the charging of one of the asylum seekers for that offence. But I think those feelings run deep. Now, we've just in the last few minutes seen a drone go up above the hotel. We think probably a police drone. We've got quite a light police presence here at the moment and no protesters here, but there was actually a demo even last night before we got this ruling because a Home Office lawyer argued in court yesterday that the competing interests, the human rights of the asylum seekers and the concerns of locals were not equal, and that was taken by people here to mean that the human rights of the asylum seekers trumped their concerns, and therefore they took to the streets even before this decision by the Court of Appeal. So we will watch, we will wait to see what the reaction of local people here is. Now, there will be a full trial on this issue, this planning issue. It was actually a technicality of planning that led to the injunction. That's going to be in the middle of October, and that was another reason for the Court of Appeal saying, why get these asylum seekers out just 6 weeks before there'll be a full hearing on this matter. So there is still that, but for now the asylum seekers, 138 of them, can stay here in Epping, when local residents only last week jubilant that the High Court had said they would have to leave by the end of next week.
OK, Becky, for now in Epping, of course, we will be back with you as the day unfolds, seeing the police move into position behind you. Worth pointing out, as Becky did there towards the end, that the full trial of this is still set for October. One of the reasons given in the judgment there from Lord Justice Bean was that if this temporary injunction were allowed to stand, those asylum seekers would be moved out by, as Becky said, the 12th of September. When it had gone to full trial in October, there was every chance that the government, the Home Office and Somani would win. Then the asylum seekers would have to be put back into the Bell Hotels. So on the balance, Justice Bean decided that it was best to set aside that injunction and grant permission for appeal. Let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig, for his take on all of this. John, good afternoon to you. So intensely political, of course, all of this, and I'm seeing from social media and the newswires, political reaction has already begun.
The government's political opponents are furious about this decision. For example, Robert Jenrick, as you might expect, first out of the blocks with his comments on this. He has put a comment on X, Twitter, saying this is an extremely disappointing decision. He said Yvette Cooper, that's the Home Secretary, used taxpayer money, your money, to keep open a hotel housing illegal migrants. He said the government's lawyers argued accommodating illegal migrants was in the national interest. In court, they said the right of illegal migrants to free hotels is more important than the rights of the British people. Well, they're not, says Mr Jenrick. He said the British government should always put the interests of the British people first. Starmer's government has shown itself to be on the side of illegal migrants who've broken into our country. He went on to say this is not a free pass for asylum hotels. Councils can and should still act to close hotels. If they don't, residents will rightly ask, on whose side are they? Now, the point about this is that Kemi Badenoch has spoken to Conservative councils, urging them to take the same sort of legal action as Epping Forest did. And there are a number of councils we've spoken to over the last few weeks who said they're considering this. Well, Robert Jenrick says councils can and should still act. Mr Jenrick says his team and Law for Borders will continue to provide legal assistance to help protect communities. He says there's no acceptable accommodation for illegal migrants. The government should be prioritising Brits in need and deporting every illegal migrant, as the last government should have done. He was a member of it, don't forget. And I've argued for years. Well, not sure he has, because he was the immigration minister. He said the government should be deporting every illegal migrant. Well, that sounds like Nigel Farage's policy, doesn't it, that he came out with earlier this week. Rupert Lowe, who was a member of Nigel Farage's Reform UK party, no longer, he said the Home Office wins its Epping appeal, a government against its own people. I make no comment about this. I would just simply gently point out that Lord Justice Bean is a leading figure in the Society of Labour Lawyers. He was one of the founding members of the Matrix Chambers. The other founding members were included Cherie Blair Booth, wife of the former Prime Minister, and Lord Hermer, the current Attorney General, has served in Matrix Chambers as well. Against that, as we reported at the time, Justice Stephen Eyre, who gave that the original High Court decision that was the subject of today's appeal, well, he, as we reported before, was a Conservative parliamentary candidate 4 times, including the high-profile Hodge Hill by-election, which saw Labour's Liam Byrne elected. He stood in Hodge Hill twice, in fact, once in Stourbridge and once in Strangford in Northern Ireland, in an election where the Tories fought seats there. So we'll see if any of the politicians make anything of the political allegiances of the 2 judges involved in this row. As for now, well, Tories and ex-Reform MP are hitting out at this decision. We await a comment from the Home Office. I would expect we will get a reaction shortly. I've got another Conservative reaction here, actually. The former Home Secretary, James Cleverly, has said, I'm sure Yvette Cooper and the Home Office think this is good news. It really isn't. Cutting local people and their elected representatives out of the loop is not a good look. So you might say that the government may have won the appeal here, but their opponents claim they certainly haven't won the argument, and the Tories in particular are clearly going to keep fighting here, and Mr Jenrick says they're encouraging other councils, despite today's result, to take the same action that Epping Forest took.